And next, we get to bring up Catherine Cooley. It is my pleasure to share Catherine with you, an organizational communication and conflict coach and trainer, certified in nonviolent communication, nonviolent compassionate communication. Today, Catherine will be taking on, can the empathy movement harmonize corporations? Ooh, say more, I'm listening.
Right. Thank you. Welcome, everybody. Let me share my screen. All right. Yes, it's wonderful to be here with people who have actually gathered to talk about empathy and growing it as a movement. And just special shout out to Edwin, Carla, Jean, the people who are working really hard to catalyze this. It's really fantastic to be here with everybody. And yeah, I really want to share today why I think that it's actually possible to have our empathy movement humanize our workplaces and really like what's happening there. And for me, the core belief around this is that we need, to have this happen and continue to grow because it is happening in business. I'll talk a little bit about that. Um, but we want to provide empathy and other emotional intelligence training that is genuine, precise, and experiential. And I think that precise uh, goes to your point, Jody, to really know what we're talking about and so forth. And yeah, and so I don't have a lot of time, so I'm going to kind of fly through this. But basically, I'm a communication and conflict coach and trainer, mediator, facilitator. And I really love working with companies, business teams, or organizational teams that are purpose driven in a really, really with intentionally purpose driven and with wide care for all the stakeholders that are impacted by their work, their companies. And my work is based on this man's work, Dr. Marshall Rosenberg, who you mentioned, Edwin, and he and Ed and Marshall actually did study with Carl Rogers. And I think that's the context you mentioned NVC in, and it's just a brilliant model for conflict, having productive conflict, and empathic and collaborative teamwork and culture building. And my point about genuine empathy, and I think this also goes to some of Jody's points about the confusion and the concern out there about empathy, right? That it can be manipulative, if it's not, and I think when people find it like that, besides the fact that it might not be mutually happening, like an actual mutual connection, then that it's manipulative, but I think that happens when it's not an embodied experience for people. Uh, so embodied empathy, that's where the real connection happens. That's what actually builds the trust and sparks innovation and creates cultures, whether that's in an organization, a business, or wider society, where people want to give their best. And a lot of people would wonder, well, hey, what's the business case for this? I think a lot of people think, how is that ever, how are we ever going to pay for this? Because if they're really tuned in, they'll know it takes some work and some time to actually implant these skills as embodied, right? Uh, so what's the business case? Well, and the good news is it's not just a feel-good idea. The research is showing that it does pay off, like literally in dollars, um, or whatever currency. And in the book, Firms of Endearment, companies built on human connection and purpose outperformed the S&P 500 by a factor of over 10 year of 10 by a factor of 10 over a time of 15 years. Why? Right? Because empathy drives loyalty and innovation and resilience, and actually a lot of things. And so these are some of the numbers that they found in Firms of Endearment, and and it's you know it's mo the good news is that empathy in business now isn't really fringe anymore. It's getting more centrally focused. And so there's movements like the Benefit or B Corps, and this movement that this slide's from, conscious capitalism. That was a movement kickstarted by John Mackey, founder of Whole Foods, when he published his book, Conscious Capitalism, and it was co-authored actually by the researcher and professor that wrote Firms of Endearment, Raj Sisodia. I just got to go to their conference in Cincinnati a couple of weeks ago. So that they studied those companies and found really big differences. And in terms of what conscious capitalism is, it's based on these four tenets, right? The higher purpose, stakeholder orientation. That means taking care of everybody around you, not just your executives and C-suite and investors, but your customers, your suppliers, not trying to squeeze every nickel and dime out of your suppliers, all the way through to the planet and how it's doing in terms of your impact. And the thing is that empathy is the core of really each of these main pillars. It's the golden thread that runs through all of it. And one of the points I really want to make today is that this consciousness shift that's happening in the business community is, I see it as like existentially really good news for all of us. Um, like literally, even possibly for our survival, because of the huge influence that corporations have on world economics, politics, and the environment, and even our social structures, right? Everything. And here's more of the business case. Companies that train empathy, 50% more net income based on study global empathy index of the top 10 companies and the bottom 10 companies and comparing them as reported in Money Magazine in 2016. Another business case put out by Google, just their very famous Aristotle project, studying their highest performing teams. Like, what's going on here? What's like the thread that links all of this great performance? And their study was based on Harvard Business School professor Amy Edmondson's work, and really it comes down to be fully present and optimally function at work, optimally functional at work, we have to feel safe. We have to know that we can talk about what's messy or sad or have hard conversations with colleagues that are driving us crazy. We can't just be focused on efficiency, like kind of the old school stuff, right? We want to know that people really care and they hear us, right? We want to know that our work matters, right? And so I want to share a little story. Like one of my clients is a CEO of a successful online retail company, and when he first came to me, he was kind of looking like this guy, just like really exhausted and struggling. He had some struggles with his business partner, but also like his customers. Like it just felt like one complaint after another, right? That was happening. And but through our work together, he came to this really he well, first of all, he started listening really differently to people, right? Instead of hearing the anger or blame that was kind of on the surface being expressed, he started to tune in to something more meaningful and relevant, which is to really hear these people's feelings and their needs, the needs underlying the feelings. And that's a really key distinction of nonviolent communication. It's one of Rosenberg's brilliant pieces. I feel because I need, right? He linked it to human needs and these and also there's work by my mentor Marie Miyashiro that also uses that same lens to link to organizational needs as well. So we're at that level with both the people and the organization, right? And and yeah, he that one shift transformed not just his energy, the CEO's energy, but his team and really had a profound impact on their customer relationships. He told me that applying empathy has compelled them to work harder for their customers and that their customer interactions are now helping them to grow their company, to solve problems, to innovate in a way that really feels mutual. And as he put it, I hope that working with us now is an experience they'll never forget. And he also told me that his team can see that he's in a good space now, way more calm, in his own words, not acting out anymore. So I'd like you to try an exercise, an empathy exercise, and I invite you to write it down on paper, or somewhere else on your device. And just first think of a recent moment. Take a few seconds. Think of a recent moment in your work life when you felt strongly about something. It doesn't have to be an upset feeling. It could be like a green flag, as I call them, a happy feeling, a pleasant feeling. But you could do empathy on either side because empathy is connecting. In NVC, we call it with what's alive, right? Which is how someone's feeling about how their needs are being met. So think of a recent moment. Hopefully you've got one. And what did you observe? What happened, like in time and space? What happened that triggered these strong feelings? Something happened. And so this is another beautiful NVC practice, getting clear about what the trigger was for the feelings. And then you can go on to step two when you're ready. What did you feel? You had strong feelings. Were they in the happy or the sad camp or the angry or the fearful? What, what was it? What was your emotional body telling you? And when you have a feeling or two, now reflect what need or value was underneath that feeling. When you think about the incident or the exchange, whatever it was, what were you needing or wanting that had you feel this way? And I'd love if you want to just put in the chat um, anything about like how that was for you to reflect back on that incident in those three specific ways. And then I want to take it one step further and offer you a sentence stem and imagine yourself being able to share, even in a simple sentence to a colleague, what the heart of the matter of that was, right? I felt X because Y is important to me. And if you're willing to put your sentence in the chat, I'd love to see them later. I felt X because Y is important to me. So take a moment, and we're almost out of time. Woo! Okay. I just want to say a little bit about 3x3 empathy factors. It's my favorite corporate empathy program. And yes, I'm biased. It was developed by my mentor, Maria Miyashiro, an internationally recognized organizational development expert and author of the book, The Empathy Factor. She's worked with over 1,000 corporate teams in more than 60 countries, crazy, including Global 500 companies. Since 2014, has been used to train over 55,000 employees, and I'm a part of an international cohort of trainers being certified in her program right now. And what I love
Fantastic.
and what I love about her work, oh, I'm out of time. Okay. It utilizes micro skills you can learn and use in just a few minutes, even in your busiest workday. Over time, they shift culture in powerful ways. And here's
Fact.
the vision. And then I have an offer. I'll put if you want to get some help and reach out, I'll put a link in the chat. And I also made a handout if anyone wants a handout, the exercise. So thank you, everybody.
Thank
So
you so much, Catherine. That was amazing for leading this conversation about conscious work of change in corporations and what it takes to build these empathetic cultures for team building, for trust building. And it does pay off consistently in game-changing innovations. In the chat are fantastic sentences you all came up with and ways to connect more with Catherine to have more of those conversations.